Welcome to the Coaches Hub podcast powered by Soccer Profile. The final whistle's gone. Boots are muddy, emotions are high, and the journey home begins. But those 20-30 minutes in the car can shape far more than a match result. In this episode, we explore the psychology of the car ride home, how a parent's words, tone, and silence can build confidence, resilience, and motivation, or unintentionally create pressure and doubt. Because development doesn't stop when the game ends sometimes, the most powerful lessons are learned on the way home. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zooming in on maybe 20 minutes that happen every weekend for a lot of families. That short drive home after a kid's sports match. It sounds simple, but it might just be one of the most, emotionally loaded and influential learning spots in their whole week.
It really is, almost like a silent battlefield sometimes. Our main resource today, it's a great piece from the Coaches Hub, actually calls it The Car Ride Home, Driving Youth Development.
Yeah.
And they frame it perfectly as the quiet classroom after the whistle.
That framing, the quiet classroom, that really hits home because, win or lose, doesn't matter. Parents have this unique chance right then. They can either solidify that kid's love for the game and teach real resilience, or maybe without meaning to, end up creating a whole lot of anxiety and pressure.
Absolutely. And often with the best intentions, that's the tough part. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're diving into the science and the psychology that this Coaches Hub resource lays out. The goal is to give you, the listener, some tools to maybe stop that car ride being about pressure and make it about, development, shaping mindset, emotional regulation. That's the key.
Okay, let's unpack this, right? First things first. Let's talk about the athlete. The final whistle blows, maybe some high fives, they walk off the field. What's actually going on inside that young player's head and body when they slump into the car seat?
Well, their system is definitely still buzzing. You have to think of it like maybe a low-level stress state that's been sustained. The sources point out their nervous system is highly activated. They've got elevated adrenaline still pumping. They've been managing conflict, physical effort, taking risks. That whole fight or flight thing, it doesn't just switch off like a light when the game ends.
So definitely not in a calm, let's think this through state. More like still reacting, still feeling the stress.
Exactly. Plus, there's cognitive overload. They're trying to process maybe dozens of quick decisions they made, remembering what the coach yelled. And their emotions are swinging wildly right. Could be pride, relief, maybe frustration about a mistake, disappointment. It's a real mix. That's why this period is often called the post-performance window. It's a time when any feedback really, just hits harder emotionally.
Yeah, and that research you mentioned makes the stakes feel really high. I think it was from Michigan State, the Institute for the Study of Youth Sports.
That's the one. Yeah, their findings really underscore this. A child's long-term confidence, and maybe even more importantly, whether they stick with the sport, it's hugely influenced by how parents act right there in that short window after the game. Calm, supportive interactions where the child feels some control, that boosts enjoyment, boosts confidence long-term. The opposite, it can drive them away.
Okay, so if that window is so sensitive, we need to get into the why, like the biology behind it. Why is jumping in with, even gentle criticism right then? Why is it so counterproductive?
Yeah, it boils down to brain development, which the resource covers well. During the game and right after, the amygdala, that's the brain's sort of emotional alarm system, it's really active. The young player is basically running on feelings. Reactive, emotional brains in the driver's seat, so to speak.
But the thinking part, the rational part, is kind of offline.
Pretty much. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning, reflection, analyzing stuff, it's still under construction, basically. It doesn't fully mature until, the mid-20s? So asking an 11-year-old to logically break down why they messed up a play 2 minutes after the whistle, you're asking them to use a tool that's just not fully available right then. You're demanding logic in the middle of an emotional swirl.
And you also mentioned something called the mirror effect, that it's not just what we say, but how we act.
Oh, absolutely. Emotional contagion. Kids are incredibly attuned to their parents' emotions. They mirror them. So if you, the parent, are radiating disappointment, maybe it's a sigh, the way you grip the wheel, even just tense silence, the child feels that, they internalize it, they start thinking, my playing made mom or dad unhappy. But calmness, that signals safety, acceptance, and that's what they need to even start processing their own feelings healthily.
Okay, so with their brains in that state, It makes sense why even parents with great intentions can mess this up. Let's get practical. What are the big mistakes, the common traps parents fall into? Maybe because they haven't managed their own emotions after the game.
Right. The first one, and it's probably the most common, is trap one, becoming the car coach. Coaching from the driver's seat.
Oh, yeah. That's so tempting, though, isn't it? You saw exactly what went wrong. You feel like you need to fix it now before they forget. How do you fight that urge to say, you really should have tracked back quicker there?
You fight it because, learning theory talks about the emotional readiness principle. Basically, learning only really happens when the learner feels psychologically safe. If they're getting critiqued in the car, that feeling of safety just evaporates. Immediate analysis, even if gentle, it triggers defensiveness. Right then, the child isn't ready for technical pointers. They're ready to decompress, to be a kid again. They need a parent, not another coach figure right then.
Okay, safety first. That makes a lot of sense. Trap number 2, you said, is about motivation, about comparing them.
Yeah, this one can be really damaging. Things like, did you see how Tom attacked the goal? You need to be more aggressive like him. Or, comparing them to siblings. The Coach's Hub resource ties this directly to something called self-determination theory.
And what's the takeaway from that theory about comparison?
Well, self-determination theory says we need 3 things for healthy, lasting motivation. Feeling autonomous, like we have choice. Feeling competent, like we're capable. And feeling connected, relatedness. Comparison just shreds all 3. It makes the kid focus on external stuff like getting your approval or being better than someone else instead of the internal joy of playing. They start playing for status, not for love of the game. And that's a recipe for burnout, frankly.
Wow. Such a big impact from what seems like a small comment. Okay, and trap 3, projecting our frustration.
Exactly. Voicing your anger about the referee or the pitch conditions or bad luck. That penalty call was ridiculous. We should have won. Mm-hmm. It might feel like you're showing solidarity being on their side, but it actually teaches a pretty unhelpful lesson about handling setbacks.
You mean it teaches them to blame other things, external stuff?
Precisely. This ties into attribution theory. Resilient people, resilient athletes, tend to attribute outcomes to things they can control: their effort, their preparation, their attitude. When parents constantly blame the refs or bad luck, they're modeling how to externalize failure. It takes away the child's sense of ownership and their ability to learn from it. If you want resilience, you got to model taking responsibility, even for emotions.
Okay, so the don'ts are pretty clear. Avoid immediate coaching, stop the comparisons, don't project your own baggage onto the situation. So the do's, they must be about building that safety, trust, and maybe some self-awareness.
Right.
It seems like small shifts can make a huge difference here.
That's what's so powerful, yes. Simple, intentional changes can really turn that car ride into a mini lesson in resilience. And maybe the most impactful do is just creating space, giving autonomy right away. The second you both get in the car, just pause. Don't jump in about the game. Maybe ask something really simple and open, like, hey, want to talk about the game now, or just have some quiet time first?
Just that one question. It hands the control back to them, doesn't it? Signals respect for how they might be feeling.
Immediately. It fosters that self-determination we talked about. Okay, so do number 2. Focus your praise entirely on process, not performance or talent. This one can be harder than it sounds, especially if they played great or scored the winner.
Right, so resisting the urge to say, wow, you're such a natural or great goal.
Exactly. Instead, praise specific things they controlled. Actions, effort, attitude. Things like, man, you kept hustling back on defense even when you looked exhausted, or I noticed you went straight over to help your teammate up after they fell. That showed real character. This links straight back to Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset.
Because if praise is always about results or talent, then failure feels like prove you're not talented. But if it's about effort,
then effort becomes the goal. Persistence becomes the thing they value and the thing they know you value. Process praise builds resilience because they learn that the thing they control, their effort, their choices, is what matters most, not the final score, which often involves things outside their control.
Okay, makes sense. And then, assuming the emotional storm has passed a bit, how do we actually guide reflection without falling back into, why did you miss that shot?
Right. Gently. We use open-ended, reflective questions, not accusatory ones. Questions aimed at their self-assessment, their ownership. Like, what was the most fun part for you today? Or what felt like the biggest challenge out there? And maybe the most useful one, looking forward. If you had the chance to play that same game again tomorrow, is there maybe one thing you might try doing differently?
That shift from just experiencing it to reflecting on it, that seems crucial for actually learning from, say, a tough loss.
It's the core of experiential learning theory, really. Turning the doing into understanding and growth. You're essentially teaching them how to become their own best analyst in a healthy way. And underpinning all of this, you, the parent, have to model calm confidence yourself. It's okay to acknowledge disappointment. Yeah, it's frustrating to lose. That shows you care, but then pivot quickly back to unconditional support.
Which leads right into the final do, I guess. That reassurance piece.
Absolutely essential. The whole interaction needs to end by reaffirming that connection, that your support isn't tied to the scoreboard. Using those little anchor phrases, simple things like, I just love watching you play, or whatever happened out there, I'm really proud of how hard you worked.
And the evidence you mentioned earlier from the Coaches Hub resource in the universities, it shows these aren't just nice ideas, right? They have measurable impact.
Oh, definitely. The data is pretty compelling. That Laufer University study from 2023, it found kids with parents who supported their autonomy were, I think, 42% more likely to stick with their sport. And conversely, you see studies like the one from University of Alberta, high-pressure car rides, directly linked to more anxiety about sport, kids wanting to avoid it.
Wow. So that 20-minute drive really could shape whether they play sport next year or not. The stakes feel quite high when you put it like that.
They really are, which is why having a simple, practical routine can help parents manage it. Sports psychologists often recommend something like the 30-minute rule.
A concrete rule. I like that. Parents are tired too after standing on the sidelines. How does that rule work?
It breaks the journey, or at least the first half hour after the game, into roughly 3 chunks. First 10 minutes, strict decompression. Silence is fine. Or talk about anything but the game. Dinner, school, music. Let them mentally shift gears. Next 10 minutes. Open the door for game talk, but only if the child starts it. If they do, use those reflective questions we discussed. If they don't, respect the silence. Let them lead. Final 10 minutes. Focus on positive reinforcement effort, attitude, connection, and with that anchor phrase, closure.
That structure seems really helpful. It takes the pressure off the parent to immediately diagnose the game, and it respects that sensitive emotional window.
Exactly. It gives everyone a predictable, stress-reducing roadmap. It reinforces the idea that the car is a safe zone, separate from the performance pressure of the field.
So when we boil it all down, what this really means is that the car ride home isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about driving development. It's this little recurring lesson in handling disappointment, finding perspective, building a kind of self-belief that isn't tied to whether they won or lost.
That's the heart of it. The big takeaway from the Coaches Hub material is crystal clear. In that car, your job isn't to coach. It's guide. It's mirror. It's cheerleader. Leave the coaching analysis for the actual coach on the training ground. The car is sacred ground for the parent-child relationship.
That's such a powerful distinction for everyone listening to take away. And it leaves us with maybe one final thought for you to chew on after this deep dive. Just consider the massive difference in the kind of self-worth you build when you tell a child, I'm so proud you won today, versus telling them, I'm so proud of how hard you worked today. Which one builds a self-worth that's stable, resilient, and doesn't need to be constantly earned through scoring goals or making saves? Just something to think about how you message effort versus outcome. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Thanks for tuning in to the Coaches Hub podcast powered by Soccer Profile. Remember, the car ride home is more than a journey. It's a chance to build confidence, resilience, and connection. Your words and your silence shape how young players see themselves. So next time the whistle blows and the engine starts, take a breath and drive development. Be sure to subscribe, share, and explore more episodes and resources at www.soccer-profile.com.